Howdy. I was shocked at the first program when I asked how many people go to the blog every day and not one person raised a hand. A total free photographic education every day, 100% free. Right now I'm on a streak of 272 days in a row with the new educational blog post. Don't be shy, just remember the hyphen. Yeah, a lot of people are new and then they find out about the blog and then they have like 3 months to just sit there and read it. It's a lot of stuff. Anyway, putting art in your nature photography. Today, and said in the blurb, the lenses are so good. Exposure is easy once you learn it, digital exposure. Most people don't know what they're doing. But once you know what you're doing, and I can teach you in about 3 minutes, that's not why we're here today. So you can get the exposure right. The lenses are sharp. If you use a fast shutter speed and keep them still, it's pretty easy to get a picture of the bird. I mean, a lot of the tours that I run, we go out and you could easily take 10,000 pictures in one day. We just were in Scotland and the UK doing puffins and gannets. The trick is first to recognize a good situation. And you can go to the puffin, you can go to either of the puffin islands and take 10,000 pictures just by pointing at every bird and taking 10 pictures. You might get one good one, but much better to walk around and look for situations where the bird is up and away from everything and the background is distant and it's clean and there's not crap in the background than to take a million bad pictures. So we're going to try to go over some of the principles today. They'll help you put art into your photography. I want to thank everybody for dropping in. And again, hold those questions to the end. Boy, what is it when you hit the clicker and people go, oh man, wow, that's nice, wow. Long lenses are my thing. Teleconverters was the first program. These are all free and wild birds, not attracted by anything, just sneaking up on them. One of the things I love most about digital photography is the ability to use slow shutter speeds to try to simulate motion, even though we're looking on a 2-axis flat image. Sometimes the scene is so beautiful that pretty much all you need to do is push the button. Yeah, this is one, I talked about it in the first program. This is with the old 400 millimeter DO lens, the f4 DO, the original one. Everybody said, oh, it's not sharp, there's no contrast, it's a junk lens. This picture won a category in nature's, won a category in the Nature's Best contest a few years back. In the same year it was honored, won a category in National Wildlife Federation. And the best part of the Nature's Best win for this picture for Gannets in Love was that was the category that they named after me. The category was Art in Nature. And the thing that really ticked me off, I entered it in BBC the same year, which is the gorilla contest. And they have a rule that if you win a major contest with an image, it can never win in BBC. So after I found out that this won in Art in Nature, in Nature's Best, and it won in Birds in National Wildlife, I said, oh my God, this is my one chance for a triple header. But the BBC didn't even look at it. It didn't even make the finals, which is pretty hard to understand. This one, that's the neck of a king penguin, an abstract, and it hung in the Smithsonian 2014, part of Nature's Best exhibit. That was My first honored BBC image that I call Blizzard in Blue, it was made, wow, very close to 2 weeks after I lost my wife Elaine to breast cancer in 1994. And what I'm most proud of is that there were about 20 other photographers at the refuge on the morning I made this picture. It was cold and it was raining, and they were all sitting in their cars with the heaters on. Then 2 days later, believe it or not, sorry about that, 2 days later, I made Fire in the Mist. And after this one, these are both film, Fuji Bellevue, Push One Stop. And after this one, this is simply get there in the morning, and there are the geese in the water, and there's white ground fog on them. And then the sun comes up over the horizon. It's like putting a match on the scene, like gasoline on fire. So by the time I made this picture, I was getting the feeling that Elaine had something to do with what was going on, pulling some strings to make this magic happen so soon after her death. This one was honored in the BBC, I think in probably 2000. And then a few years later, I got an email, "Dear Mr. Morris, we'd like to use your geese in the fire mist," as they called it, in a book called Light on the Earth, featuring 30 years of the best images of the BBC contest. So my initial reaction was, that's good, but what about Blizzard in Blue and several other BBC honored pictures? But I didn't say that. Then I kept reading the email, and they said, actually, we're going to use this picture as wraparound cover art. So that was quite an honor. Sometimes the birds themselves are so beautiful that you don't have to do a whole lot more than point it at them and make it sharp. King Eider, amazingly beautiful bird, nice soft light. So you see this picture and you go, yeah, that's pretty cool. And really, we only want to judge the pictures by what we see. You know, I'm a co-founder and now co-owner of birdphotographers.net, a critiquing site. So oftentimes somebody posts a picture and they'll put a comment like, oh, I had to climb 36 miles up a mountain in snow with my bare feet. Well, I'm glad you had fun, but nobody really cares. All that we want to do is look at the picture and judge it on its merits. That said, I would tell you that the day I made this, we had set out, we were in, on the North Shore. The North Shore of Alaska, the famous birding place. Barrow. We were in Barrow, Alaska, and we had set out to walk 7 miles across the tundra to find rumored Sabine's gull, or Sabines. How do you say it, Peter? Sabine's gull, that were rumored to be nesting. So we walked about 3 miles out, and there was a snowbank, and my friend was post-holing it. And I said, well, I've lost a little weight. I don't have to walk in his post holes. I'll walk to the right of him a little bit. And I took about 3 steps, and my right leg slammed down about 1.5 feet, and I destroyed my right hip. And within 10 minutes, I was like, I can't go anymore. And I went back to the car, and they were out there for hours more. And I sat in the cold van, and just my whole right hip seized up, and I couldn't move and I couldn't walk. They finally came back to the van, and I said, listen, we have to get back to the hotel. I have to get some heat on this. I said, we only stop for King Eiders. Not only did I have to climb up the mountain with my bare feet, but we were in waders. We got into this pond, and the bottom was this ice out condition where the bottom of the pond was lumpy ice. So we sat and we pulled ourselves forward at like 100 yards over this ice. but I still like the picture. Black-browed albatross, easy for you to say, in the Falklands. Just beautiful. I love the pink on the base of their bill and the yellows, and then they're in love, and how much better does it get? California brown pelican, the Pacific race. Our bird on the East Coast, our bird from Florida, sort of green in the base of the bill. They're sort of ugly compared to these guys. These guys are gorgeous. I've been going out there, I've been going to San Diego since '72, started birding in '76. Every year I go out. My mom lived in San Diego from '69 till about 2004. And every time I would get to San Diego and get off the plane, she'd say, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I said, "Ma, you know what I'm doing. You're going to La Jolla?" "Yes, Mom, I'm going to La Jolla." "And what are you going to do, photograph pelicans?" "Yes, Mom, I'm going to photograph." "What's the matter? Don't you have enough pelican pictures already?" "No, Ma." Gentoo penguins, gorgeous light, beautiful background. Great egret from Gatorland. These birds get in breeding plumage in Florida. We talked about that in the first program. When they're actively involved in breeding, there's increased hormonal flow, and the lores, the skin in front of the eye, gets all these juiced up colors. Same thing with great white pelican. This is from Greece. Painted bunting from Texas out of water drip. And a beautiful sea otter with almost alluvial fan-like patterns on its face. This was from the bear boat, swimming right next to the boat. A tulip from the famed Keukenhof Gardens in Amsterdam, Holland. And went up there one year, and it was very late in the season for the tulips in the conservancy. So many of them were half dilapidated. So a lot of people said, "Oh boy, they're ugly, they're not in their perfect bloom." And I said, "Yeah, but every time there's one petal down, it's an invitation to go and see the beautiful stuff inside." In the Galapagos, a baby intermediate morph red-footed booby. I'm sorry, not a baby, that's an adult intermediate morph, sorry. Photography, all about the light. Without light, we got nothing. So most folks get out to Nickerson Beach, and they get there a few minutes before sunrise, about 6. I get there a few minutes after 5, hope for some color, figure out how the wind is, and try to position myself where the terns or the skimmers might fly through the color. One morning I was at my mom's about 4 years ago, and I woke up about 3 a.m. and I went online and I did this and I did that. Finally got in the car. I'm coming down the Meadowbrook. I hadn't checked the weather at all. And there's one spot at the end where you turn left to go over the last bridge. And I look to my left, and the entire world is pink and orange and yellow and purple. The most glorious sunrise I've seen in my life. And by the time I got there, so I vowed never again. I'm getting there an hour before sunrise. Early morning, west wind, bad for flight in general, has the birds coming towards you just as the sun cracks the horizon. Arctic tern in Nome. Now you don't often think of early morning light at 1:20 a.m. But when you're in a place with 24 hours of sunlight, it can be quite sweet. Roadrunner in New Mexico, getting on the ground, beautiful early morning light. A rare opportunity to get out of the ground on a roadrunner. Those of you who've been to Bosque, You're lucky the last few years, you're lucky if you see one, and most times they're skittish, but I was with my friend, Judge Jim Hoypel, and the bird was very tame, and it was early in the morning. We had been around once, not seen anything, and I said, let's try it. We'll use the car as a blind, sneak around it, and we were able to get on the ground. You know, once in a lifetime opportunity for sure.
What bird was that?
Greater roadrunner, desert bird from mostly Arizona. See lots of them. People feed them. My friend Ned Harris feeds him meatballs by hand in his living room. A dahlia from a workshop a couple of years ago with the 200 to 400 lens for long focal length. This one was above the rest in early morning light. Then take a big diffuser and just block the sun. So flower in shade, background in sun. This one I actually like the sunny one better. Usually the opposite. Nickerson Beach, quite a many years ago with the 800, early morning light, and a baby least tern wandered away from the nest. And then just walk slowly after it, 800 and a 1.4, and it just goes up on top of this ridge and pauses just for a second. Galapagos tortoise, and with this image, with the big, big lenses, you don't have to get that low for the picture to appear that you're almost either laying or sitting on the ground. Because if this were a tame bird and I walk right up to it with a 300 and shot it here, it'd be horrible shooting down on it. But if you're at 1140 and plus a Mark IV camera is another 40%, 1500, now instead of my angle of declination being like this, it's only going to be like this. And here I'm actually sitting, so I'm at the same level as the tortoise. And what that does, it puts the background far away. So rather than calling this a beautiful subject, I'd say venerable. Sort of like Peter. Everybody loves bald eagles. I love them in soft light. Same with, I'm a huge fan of white sky, high key, no shadows, cloudy bright, 100 millimeter macro, more soft light, and then turn around. Soft light, sun comes out. You know when you look in the water and it's like, yai, yai. You can barely see the subject at times. Well, it takes some practice as some general rules for photographing into what I call the blasting highlights. Start at -2. You can be in AV mode. Start at -2. You're going to need a small aperture because you're going to have a high shutter speed because of all of that light. Take a picture at -2. If you have a ton of blinkies, go to -3. If it looks a little dark and there's no blinkies and the histogram is well off the axis, try -1. But you definitely, most times, need to underexpose to get these blasting highlight images. Now, that was a -3 one. That was in the Galapagos, and it's a marine iguana, and I was doing that. And one of the things I try to teach is that no matter how good the situation that you have, keep your eyes open, keep your eyes moving. Look to the right, look to the left, look behind you. So here I'm taking a few pictures of this and I have the exposure right, and I see this Sally Lightfoot crab walking. And I go, oh baby, it's just gonna be about 2 seconds more. And then when it came in, I went bam, bam, bam. In this frame, it was placed nicely. Yeah, this is a new one. One of the people that was on the trip saw this picture and they said, where did you do that? This was on our Bass Rock landing on the UK Puffins and Gannet strip. And we were done, we went down early, and The sun was there and it was mostly sunny with a little edge off of it. And I saw the gannets landing in this, through these beautiful specular highlights. And I took about 20 frames, and this one worked, and had this little friend looking up to greet him. Strong backlight. People go, oh, Artie just points his shadow at the birds, that's all he ever does. Well, yeah, I point my shadow at the bird when the sun is out and it's a clear day, unless I'm shooting direct backlight. I have nothing against backlight, and here I had a bunch of things going. Give me the black background, and the fact that when I'm shooting, let's say those things are the sun, and I'm pointing my shadow here at the bird like this, so it's the sun, me, and the subject. But when I'm shooting backlight, I want the sun, the subject, and me. So the way it works out is about 98% of the time, me, the subject, and the sun are all on the same 180-degree line. When I'm shooting backlit, or you're going to see some silhouettes in a minute, where's the strongest silhouette color going to be? Right on the 180 line, backlit. Here's gentle backlight, 180 macro, laying on the ground at Morro Bay, California poppy. With selective focus, probably at f4, just focusing here. And this is a rare one for me. I would tell you to take a picture. An Artie Morris side-lit shot that he likes. Because I rail against side lighting. This is about 80 degrees off angle to the light, but notice the way the bird's head is turned to our right, that there's nice light on the side of the face. Waved albatross, Hood Island in the Galapagos Archipelago. Another side-lit image that I like, this was from North Seymour in the Galapagos, with the 100 to 400, early morning light on a marine iguana. And God bless, the reason I had to work off angle to the light, anybody know? I had taught all the participants too well. They were all stacked up on sun angle, and I couldn't get a spot. So I had to work off angle, and I was very happy. But that's two rare ones. Nickerson Beach on a cloudy, bright afternoon. Even 3 o'clock can be good if the edge is off the sun. If it's bright, blasting sun, not so good. Beautiful late afternoon, La Jolla Shores Beach, a Heerman's gull, and the yellow is the gold reflected from Torrey Pines cliffs in the afternoons, and the blue is the sky. More backlight, this one at Gatorland, and the egrets landed on an ugly post. Longer lens, find a shaded background, move my angle pretty much to the backlight, but mainly looking for a totally black shaded background. Yesterday morning's blog was entitled Blacklight. I don't know if I put the picture and show. It was a beautiful western gull with the blackest background you want, jet black. And what I did was I saw that by getting my tripod up nice and tall, I could shoot this white bird in the sun against the background of a distant cliff in the shade. So the black backgrounds can be powerful. In Torres del Paine, Wanaco, backlit, and so much of this stuff is about pre-planning and visualization. We drove by a hill to go to a pond to photograph silvery grebe, and there were lots of Wanacos feeding on the hillside, and I said, hey, go ahead 3.5 hours on our way back. If these animals are in the same spot, and we can get the sun just over the hill, we can kill them backlit. 3-4 hours before we did it, never having seen the situation before, and then go and make this one. And then in Photoshop, going for different color of the backlight, just as a result of my post-processing. And this one was honored in Nature's Best. Should enter that one. What is it? A butterfly wing. Steve, you're not even within 10,000 animal kingdoms. For the record, Steve Feingold, an old friend from Brooklyn. That is the hump and the rump of a coastal brown bear, backlit in June. Anybody know that rock? That's the little one next to Morro Bay Rock. It's just it's not really north. I guess it's northwest of Morro Bay Rock. There's this little rock, I think they call it bird poop rock, with a less politically correct word than poop. And less politically correct than guano. Anyway, 100 to 400 hand holding, dramatic shape. You see where the sun is, F22 for the starburst.
And there's birds on its nose.
Birds on its nose. Same place, just 100 yards to the right, long-billed curlew in the surf with a nice sand crab for dinner. The Palouse, Washington State. I go with I bring the 200 to 400, and I use it often with 1 or 2 teleconverters. This was with 1 teleconverter at 560 millimeters. Beautiful light. You see, you're like 5 minutes from sundown. Watch what happens in 4.5 minutes. And for that one, I went to 2 teleconverters, the internal and an external, for 784 millimeters. The background. It's funny. Steve Feingold and I have a mutual friend named Milton Heiberg. I am proud to say, nothing against Milton, who remains a good friend to this day, but I only took 1 course in nature photography in my life. It was 8 Tuesday nights at New York City Audubon. Started in February of 1984, 6 months after I bought my first lens. And we had critiquing sessions, which was really a great part of the class. And it was back then that Milton got me to realize that, yeah, the birds can be beautiful, but the background often makes the picture. And that continues to this day. San Diego, the brown pelicans, the Pacific Ocean, 200 yards away, a beautiful background, early morning light. Down in the Falklands for black-browed albatross, the ocean is always a great background, whether it's in sun or in shade. From the recent puffin trip, 1200 millimeters, seeing the puffin against a background of beautiful green, late afternoon light, just a little edge off the sun. Cattle egret at Gatorland in early morning light, and again, that distant background. If this bird were on a bush here, and the bush were here, this picture is going to be ugly no matter how beautiful the bird. You're going to see all the leaves and Back in the original The Art of Bird Photography, now available only in softcover, I wrote, my 2 favorite backgrounds are out of focus green vegetation or distant out of focus blue water. And the sweeter the light, early morning or late afternoon, the better. But the key is you need distance from the subject to the background. Your background could be a garbage dump, but if it's 500 yards away and you shoot at f/16, It's just going to be a beautiful palette of soft out of focus colors. It could be a beautiful bush, but if it's 6 inches behind the bird, it's still going to be a bush. Black-legged kittiwake, some fall color, up in Katmai National Park on a bareboat trip. Nickerson Beach about 12 days ago, getting down on the ground. And again, as early as the original The Art of Bird Photography, I wrote, add green whenever possible. So here I was laying on the ground, and I didn't like that the green was here. So I just pulled one leg of the tripod up and sat up a little bit and got the picture that I wanted. Baby common tern. Plenty of these in California, and they generally don't run away. But it is a bird of paradise.
Yeah.
So I think this is the 100 to 400 on a cloudy day. And we actually got, one of the guys was local. We got some boxes out of his car and stood up to get the green background. And then if we stepped down off the cartons, you had your white sky. Which one's better? I don't know, but the thing is, you can, by varying your perspective, you can create different looks for the same subject. That's a gerenuk. I think it's from Kenya. And you know, where are you going to get a background where the tones match the animal perfectly? So lots of serendipity. And I don't think they're animals either. The out of focus stuff is just brown vegetation. Beautiful background. It pretty much almost matches the matte finish that I've chosen for the background for the show. And you'd have a lot of guesses to guess this background. It's from Santee Lakes, and you're encouraged to feed the bird. You're encouraged to buy their duck scratch that they sell you for $1 a bag, but feeding is permitted. And this guy was on a little gazebo that was painted gray. This is a natural background for a Gentoo penguin, just a river in shade. He was in the sun, the background river behind a rock in shade. The funny part is, people often ask, how long did it take you to get that shot? So I generally say, well, it depends on your viewpoint. Maybe it was 33 years, and maybe it was, and maybe it was 1/500th of a second. But a lot of times I feel that I'm superbly blessed, where I figured the exposure here, and I got in position. I think it was this with a teleconverter, and I still hadn't taken what I would call a good picture yet. I just was checking my histogram, and I just got down to where I wanted, and the bird went. There was one recently, geez, I can't remember it. Oh, it's a western gull. It's not in the show. But somebody was is it a western, or were we in England? I forget, but somebody was on a gull and they were photographing for a half hour, and they said, it doesn't do anything. And I went up there and I focused on it, and as soon as I focused on it, the giant yawn. I said, I'm done, see you later. That's the one from the blog yesterday, Blackground, where I was able to get high enough to get the distant cliff in shadow with the bird and sun and give this dramatic effect. And the same deal at St. Augustine, recognize a situation with late afternoon light on the two great egret chicks and the background in shadow. So, two cool combinations. Subject in sun, background in shadow, can be killer when the bird's white. Another changing the background shot. I'm here in the Farns, photographing the puffin against dark, and I go, let's see, how would it look with a light background? Well, I'll come here and shoot it against the water. Which one's better? I don't know. This bird flapped, and I cut his wings off. So sometimes I'm not always perfectly lucky.
Handheld?
No, most of the big stuff with this is the 600 and I think a 1.4 or maybe alone, always on the tripod. The smaller lenses handheld. What I'm generally doing is walking around with one of these and then an RS7 strap with one of these on my shoulder, or the 400 DO or the 70 to 200, depending on where we are. Now this is the opposite situation, even more spectacular. Subject in shade and background in sun. You don't get many of them, but boy, they can be spectacular. I remember with this bird, this was in Cape Coral, Florida, and the female was over here. And I was just getting on the ground with the 600, so I'm a good ways back, the 600 and a 2X and a 1.4 crop factor camera, and I just got on the ground, and this bird comes flying in like, "What are you doing with my girlfriend?" And he was standing up so tall and his eyes were so bugged. I got one frame. I was so happy. The background. This was, what's the flower? No, it's not a poppy. Cosmos. Cosmos. We had seen a field of cosmos. Actually, a friend saw it while I was sleeping on the way up to Memphis to do some programs. And she said, "Oh, we got to go back the next morning when we do the Old Car City." So I went down, we went down, and it was spectacular. And again, my gig is tight, long lenses, so it's 200 to 400 with the teleconverter to isolate a single flower with a background of cosmos. Then for years, I've been down a lot to the Southern Ocean in the last 5 years, and I've marveled at the pink wing lining of the Gen 2 penguins. And I said, boy, it'd be great if I could get a nice background for one of those wing stretches. So here I have one stretch and hold his wing for like 5 minutes, and the background is penguin guano. And this is a pond on the Galapagos where in some years, not every year, depending on rainfall, there's a bloom of a fern called azolla. And my guide knows all the stuff, Juan Salcedo, and he took us there, and it took a while, but we got the shot, and probably 70 to 200 with the beautiful pink background and the little ferns on its head. Lesser scaup in sailboat reflections, Glorieta Bay in San Diego. And sometimes we will pick out something in the background and say, well, what are we going to do to get a bird in there? And generally the answer to that is wait. And this was a quiz on the blog. This was handheld with the 600 and the teleconverter. Why was I hand holding? No one got the right answer, which was, I left my tripod in the car. I'd have much rather been hand holding. But what I did, because I knew I just wanted a bird anywhere near the color, was with the, I think it was the 1D Mark II, I used 65 point, where you light up all the autofocus sensors, and I was able to get on the bird and frame it with this one little tiny bit of nice sky. This is a new picture from Jones Beach. Least turn on the nest and beautiful habitat. Uses the shells to surround its nest and build actually the base of the nest. And then small in the frame, purple sandpiper on a bed of mussels, Barnegat jetty, New Jersey. And
Those aren't in Jersey,
no, that was Long Island. In a snowstorm. Actually, I should have told a good story. You saw the cardinal shot in the beginning, right? The story of that one was that I was at my mom's for Christmas, and there was a 28-inch snowfall 5 years ago. So 2 days after, I decided I wanted to go to Elizabeth A. Morton, where, again, another place where inexplicably they let you feed the birds. So I got out there, and to my horror, they hadn't plowed the parking lot. All that was in my mother's car was a long-handled spade. So after about an hour, I had shoveled about 1 foot for my parking spot. And then again, thank you, Elaine, was looking down on me, and along comes a guy in a bobcat with a plow on the front, and he says, "Get out of the way." He took Rachmaninoff on my soul, and he went zoop, 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 and he made 1 parking spot. I offered him $20 and he drove off. And then I made the cardinal. But yeah, bad weather can be great. This was an afternoon landing.
Looks like South Georgia.
Oh, it's South Georgia for sure. I'm just trying to figure out which one. I don't know. I love bird photography because of the challenge of getting the right exposure, getting the picture sharp when you want it sharp, all of this after you see the situation, getting it blurred if you want to make a pleasing blur, and then using your autofocus system to design the image pleasingly, not just have every bird right in the middle. And the great challenge is that we often have to do this in 1 to 2 seconds. Do all of those things to have a chance. So when it comes together, it's quite wonderful. So here's a case where we saw some eagles flying in across the sound, and I said to the group, if you use, at the time I think it was 45 point with the Mark IV, I said if you use 45 point, you can put the bird in the upper right and have the mountains in the bottom. So imagine the pleasure of seeing that and then doing it. And even greater pleasure, showing the group after you do it. Again, just a beautiful ocean, and just that odd pose of the bird pulling its head back, adding some diagonals. And your standard portrait, there's your purple sandpiper, well back in the frame. Ideally, I have a little bit more room. I have a good look at his feet, a little bit more room behind the tail. I generally say you want 3 or 4 times more room in front than behind, so he could have been a little forward in the frame. Really not a big deal to add some canvas there. Ugly as a coot, except when it's in beautiful green reflections at Santee Lakes. And a marble godwit. And this is actually an unusual one. You don't see many like this. This is in Florida. But what color is the base of marble godwit's bill, Peter, most of the year? Pink. Beautiful alabaster pink. That was my spark bird. Seeing one in the summer of 1984 on the East Pond in August, and seeing that bird and going, oh my God, it's so beautiful, nobody knows it's here. But the orange base to the bill is breeding plumage. So this is a bird that's like going to leave the next day to go up to the prairie provinces and in Canada and make a nest. But again, just a beautiful high key look. He almost looks like he's on a cloud with the soft light and the beautiful clean sand. Nice background, swallowtail gull in the Galapagos. And with those big eyes, anybody know what that's telling us? Nocturnal feeder, yeah. Feeding mostly on squid. Roseate spoonbill, and this big war coming. I have some friends who take people out by boat to photograph spoonbills and other birds in Florida. And now Florida Audubon has got this new thing where they're going to put huge protective areas around it so that we can't do stuff like this. And it may sound like sour grapes, But we're photographers. If we're sitting in the water and the birds are 100 feet away or 75 feet away and the birds are sleeping, we've had these Audubon folks come up and scream at us. What are we doing? You're too close. When they roar up in their boat. So, but they are allowed a couple of times a year to get on the island, walk among the birds, cause young to jump out of the nest so they could band them, and the whole bit. So my argument is, hey, the researchers caused more disturbance in one landing than all the photographers in the whole state in a year. So check out the blog tomorrow. The war is about to begin. White sky from the Gannet boat, 70 to 200 F4. There's so much action on this Gannet boat where they're feeding fish to the birds that I go from the 70 to 200 2.8 to the F4 just because it's lighter. Because if you're using a heavier lens, after the first hour you can't even lift your arms. Nice background. Most people walk into Keukenhof Gardens in Amsterdam with a 100 macro or a 180 macro. So imagine the sight of me. But without the 600, I don't make this picture. It's a 600 and a 1.4, 30 feet out in the middle of the bed, and then getting the beautiful red background. Beautiful image design, bird in the lower left. Verticals. If you have lots of beautiful habitat, you want to get the birds in the corners, not in the middle. Long-billed curlew, Morro Bay. And this is just a nice musical arrangement of great egrets at dawn. And yeah, I had to wait like 10 seconds for the stars to line up correctly. Oh my God, what is that?
All of your JPEGs disintegrating.
Needs work. Not that one. The reflection, the soft light, perfectly still morning, Fort DeSoto. Yeah, this one, everybody liked that on Facebook, like 784 people. And the craziest part of this, I had the 400 DO and this 1DX Mark II on my shoulder, and they had this beautiful still little pond, a tidal pond, and I was hoping they'd skim towards me. Even though the wind was from the northeast, they were skimming away. And then I saw a couple at the far end of the pond, so I got the 600 and the 1.4 and the 5DSR. Well, actually, that's the 5DSR. And that was the winning picture. And in the blog about 3 days ago, I showed 100% crop of this and this. That camera is so sick. You can see detail in the toenails. You can see every drop. You can see every striation on the bill. A nice arrangement of subjects at pre-dawn in the pink blue light at Little Estero Lagoon. Little Estero Lagoon has gone down the old tubes. It's been cut off from the Gulf and there's like no water. A nice Japanese painting arranging, and then with the beach grasses. And 5 spoonbills, all with good head angles. That's the trick when you get more than one bird, is getting all good head angles. Japanese red-crowned crane on a hillside looking really creamy. I mentioned to the first group that the great part of my Japan trip is that there's woods up here, and right behind the woods is our lodge. It's quite a great location. And then bringing the image into Photoshop and going a little bit nuts and creating that, just the bird's markings against the overexposed white background. And the same thing there. And that starts from a perfectly exposed picture which can be processed to look like a normal shot, and then just overexposing it to just leave the black and the yellow and the gray against the white matte. When I first started, I said, I only want one bird in the frame or one tortoise, and I don't want anything in the background. And then I made a picture of a mother bear and a baby bear, and I crawled to the right to open up the baby bear clamming with the mother bear, and that was honored in Nature's Best. And then I fell in love with juxtaposition shots, where you have one subject in focus and one in the right spot out of focus, and it can really add a lot to the images. That's a juxtaposition and a half. A baby gator on the mother's face. That was Texas. Another beautiful juxtaposition, a dahlia and a bud. Do you know what this one said to that one? No, actually, that's bad. Start again. Do you know what this flower said to the other flower?
What?
This bud's for you. That was a wreck job. So here I am, killing myself to get close to birds. Everybody knows it's impossible to get near a kingfisher. So what do? Put them 5 pixels in the frame and make a beautiful photograph. Fort DeSoto in the pre-dawn. Trying to come up with something different. I was just shooting the waves on the beach, and then once in a while I'd see an albatross fly by, and I said, wait a second. If we get one flying in the right spot and we use a lower left sensor, we can do something here. Bingo. I've tried this in a million situations where the shadows of the birds on the sand are killer. No luck. That was the winner. The environmental stuff, that's a National Wildlife Federation card this year. Birds interacting. Here's laughing gulls fighting over a southern kingfish in the soft light. And then an oyster catcher just finished taking a drink. And the trick when you're photographing birds in the surf is to watch the break of the waves. You don't want the wave breaking through its head. So this one's just about perfect right at his feet, and then the hint of another wave in the background. We had this amazing situation. I was in San Diego for 2 months. On March 24th, I had green light laser surgery. And lo and behold, after 4 months of challenging hell, I'm just about back to where I was before the surgery. So I'm hoping that I will continue to improve and have a great result. But paid my money, took my chances. We shall see. But the good news was that these Brand's cormorants were nesting 20 feet this side of a fence. Just spectacular opportunities. Huge lesson. Baby king penguin, nice shot, but as we talked about in the first group, everybody generally wants the head square to the back of the camera. Now this bird's head is square to the back of the camera. But in general, if given my druthers, and not every situation, but in most situations, rather than have the bird's head perfectly square to the imaging sensor, I'd like to see it 2 to 3 degrees turned towards you. Watch the difference. Light years difference. Ah. That's about 4 degrees. That's a big head turn. So, meh. Ooh. You can even see the way the eye lights up, and the face is better lit even though there's no light once they turn that head toward you. Perfect head angle, Northern Fulmar, probably 800 lens with a teleconverter, Iceland at 2:30 in the morning. With the Atlantic Ocean 2.5 miles away. How's that for a distance? Because we're on a 1,000-foot cliff and I'm sitting. So how's that for a distant background? Yep. Alafia Banks, 800, 1.4. Spoonbill walked right by us. And now they want to put, in this particular area, they want to put a 300-foot limit instead of the 100-foot limit they're putting everywhere else. Again, everybody goes on the Eagle boat on the Japan and winter trips, and they bring the 300, maybe a 500. I went with my tripod and my 800. Dime a dozen shot in San Diego on a cloudy day with the far hillside. And then once in a while we saw some of the stuff done in Photoshop. This one is Topaz Impressions, Buzz Sim filter. And then what you do, you can go in and erase the eye to bring the eye back. Nice little habitat shot. Another breeding plumage marble godwit with the marsh background. Whoops. Wide shot, Gentoo penguins in a heavy surf. And black-bowed albatross on a nesting cliff at the Rookery. I think that's Bleecker Island. Small in the frame, minimalist look. Sandhill cranes with snowy woods. I think I ran this one in the blog with the Robert Frost poem. Wanako, yawning, tucked in the corner of the frame. What's the bird? Anybody? Bald eagle in a snowstorm. And I love this surrealistic look, almost like a pointillism thing. And I could never enter it in a contest because there was a second bald eagle head over here, which I took out. And it sort of ruined the picture for me with it, so. That could be taken in the wrong way. Getting low or high. Getting low at the Soto 600 lens on the ground. Just beautiful, intimate images. Just, you feel so connected to the bird. Laying down on the beach at Estero. Foreground and background completely out of focus. Call this the shorebird in heaven look. You get down so low that the foreground becomes out of focus, almost like a cloud. A snowy plover preening on East Gulf Beach at Sanibel. King penguin in the snow. This was actually a good one. I go on the trip about 3 years ago and I have a brand new 1DX and a brand new 502 on my tripod. And had the most wonderful morning photographing, getting down in the snow with the penguins. And I went to see a friend and then I was walking back and I was going to get back early and I was just so at peace and I'm looking up at the hillsides covered with penguins and the molting penguins and I'm walking with my lens on my shoulder just as peaceful as could be and my right toe hits a rock and I go slamming down face first into the tundra and my brand new 1DX camera goes flying 50 feet that way and the lens mount is ripped out of my 500 lens and people see me and they go, oh my God, are you going to kill yourself? Your trip is ruined. I said, listen, anybody ever hear of Byron Katie? You all need to. I said, listen, that's the best thing that could have ever happened. And I could prove it. And they said, how could that be the best thing that ever happened? I said, well, I'm a lover of what is, and that's what happened. Best thing that could have happened. I said, what's going to happen is I'm not going to have to carry this heavy lens around. I have the 300-2.8 and my teleconverters, and I'm going to make great pictures. And that's exactly what came to pass. So what would the point be of going, oh, I ruined my trip, it's $20,000 down the sewer? What's the point? It's not going to change anything. Byron Katie, easiest website in the world, thework.com, learning to love what is. Actually, for 7 years, I was a mess over losing Elaine. And it wasn't until I started doing the work that I found some peace. So it really is a remarkable site. And she's a remarkable lady. And I hope before I die to get to give her a hug. Namibia, the leader, one of the co-leaders said, bring your big lenses and the ground pods. And I said, 100 to 400 and a 1.4 teleconverter. And while everyone was struggling to get into position with the tripods and the big lenses as these animals moved around, I just took my 1 to 4, flopped on the ground, bam, 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 up, over, move. Nickerson Beach, picking a seat, waiting for something good to come along. Common turn with a pipefish. Seated at Jamaica Bay, a juvenile least sandpiper. But when you're seated at 1200 millimeters, your angle of declination to the bird is relatively shallow. It almost looks as if I were laying on the ground. Here, the marine iguana is simply on a cutout. I'm standing down on the beach and there's a little cliff. So I pull one leg of the tripod out like this, just to get a foot or two lower quickly and get on the same level as the animal. Oh, this is another one. I climbed up the mountain with bare feet in the snow. This was laying down on an angle on lava rock, which is like sort of laying on razor blades. And I was down there about 5 minutes crying. And as soon as I saw this picture on the back of the camera, I said, I'm done. And same deal with land iguana, much easier, South Plaza. Imagine it's a tame animal. If I walk up and shoot down, the shot's horrible. But by just getting on the ground with the 70 to 200 and getting the distant background, the beautiful vegetation, nice picture. Being flat, remember what I said about always looking around you? We were photographing some clamming bears down sun angle, and I'm going like, oh, here comes one. And we had some steam, and it was nicely backlit. 70 to 200. 200 to 400, laying on the ground, just waiting for the bears to do something nice. I'm missing my nap today. Being low with the subject high. Gannets were a few young pairs that were trying to nest on top of a gazebo, a shelter, a rain shelter. Unique opportunity, 400 DO, pointing the lens up and waiting. That's part of his display. And when they sky point, they turn their head slowly. So every time he came close to square, it was boom, 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 and get one showing both pupils. Getting high in a helicopter in Namibia. Shadows on the dunes. And this one is an amazing one. I met a guy at San Diego. And he had a 70 to 200 and he showed me some pictures and I was helping him. Just because I wasn't teaching, I was by myself. And then he said, do you give lessons? I said, yeah. He said, when? I said, how about tomorrow morning? He said, great. Then, before we did anything, he said, listen, I have a condo, the big condo right on La Jolla, right on the Coast Boulevard place. If you want to go up there this weekend and bring a friend or two, there's some cool shots looking down on the rocks. I met the guy 5 minutes ago. So he left our name at the desk. We went in, we got the key, we went up there using 10 stop Stingray neutral density filters, 5 and 10 stop, and doing 10, 15-second exposures. And that's my favorite. Now we weren't real high here. This was in Namibia, but a 16 to 35, just photographing the pelicans from the boat, getting a beautiful view looking down at them with flash, with the 24 to 105. And getting high can getting high can mean being on a bridge in the pre-dawn on Japan in winter. Forget the name of the bridge, but there's some famous pictures. I've gone about 20 times, no, not 20. I've gone about 10 times and nearly frozen, and this was our best morning. Flight, behavior, and action. Brown pelican taken off at Alafaya Banks. If the new restrictions are put in place, we're back another 200 feet. Landing, red crown crane. Common turn at Nickerson with the 100 to 400 and the 72 handheld. Bringing in a little baby bluefish, a little snapper blue. Probably too big for the chicks. And then a coot running across the water at Santee Lakes, north of San Diego. Bald eagle ready to dive. And a beautiful Caspian tern at DeSoto, diving. And again, these are so hard. You get on them, and they're hovering for a second, and your muscles are like tense, because you know they're just going to do this. For the big birds in flight, you generally want to try to get the wings in the full downstroke, or the wings pretty much up. So people say, how do you do that? Do you time it? And the answer is no. You get the bird in the zone, coming into the light, starting to fill half the frame, and then you go boom, 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 3 or 4 pictures, and you take it. I get a kick out of people, and I've seen amazing ones. The best one was a guy in Japan in winter. He was on another boat. He had this gigantic contraption. It was like a crane that he wore. It was in a harness. And the crane went up about 5 feet over his head, and the lens hung down in front of him. So I said, well, it looks really awkward, but in the right hands, it might be decent. And my thoughts about this guy being a decent photographer lasted exactly until he saw his first bird. What he did was he saw a stellar sea eagle about a mile away. And he got on it with his contraption, and I don't know if it was a 500 or 600, and he started photographing like this. And it took about 2 minutes for the bird to fly to us. And he must have took about 2,500 pictures. And the bird, and he just kept, and as the bird flew away, he turned, and the bird was in the, and he's still going, of course, I had like my 300 f4, and I waited 5 minutes, and the bird came to us, and I went boom, 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 and I felt like saying to him, hey, buddy, I wouldn't trade my 3 for your 3,000. But it's like, so the trick is to get the bird coming into the zone, get the focus, halfway these, sun's here, and then boom, 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 boom. Some guys are good enough, and I know of some of the young guys, that they can get on it and get a 10 or 12 frame sequence with the bird. I can't even do that on a tripod anymore. I never could. I never had the hand-eye coordination, and now it's gotten worse. But there's guys that can get 10, 15, 10, 12 in a row with the bird centered in the frame. Not me.
So are you on continuous or shooting birds?
There's only one drive speed for bird photography. Continuous high. We sort of glossed over that in the first thing. You spend all this money on a lens, getting to a place, getting up early, getting out there. Anything less than continuous high makes no sense. And for those who photograph with me, they will see that even if the bird is just sitting there, I'm always taking 3 in a row. Because you'll see a shot where it looks perfect and then the nictitating membrane is down. They do that every 10 or 15 seconds. So I'm always taking 3 in a row. And you can take 15 in a row even. And the craziest part is, if the bird is sitting there and you take 15 in a row, seemingly identical, 99 times out of 100, one of them is going to be clearly best. So yeah, shoot a lot. This is a young skimmer at Nickerson. Beautiful wings up position. Rare to get them skimming close to shore. This was late in the afternoon with high ISO. The pancake shot is generally not very pleasing, especially if the bird had been a little more tilted and I just would have seen the edge of the wing. That's really disgusting. But what makes this interesting is that this bird is telling us that it's 14 degrees or colder.
No feet?
No feet. His feet are pulled up into his feathers on his body. You better have your hand warmers in. Now flat with the bird coming at you is fine. This is black-browed albatross in the Falklands with the 400 5.6 and a high ISO. Showing those feet is always a big plus. Red crowned crane dancing with a leaf. And in the Galapagos, a white morph, red-footed booby landing. This is high ISO, 400 DO2 or the 300 2.8 with a high ISO and wide open. And a brown pelican shaking in flight, Alafia Banks. Move back 100 feet more, please. Oh, the best part about the Alafia Banks war that's coming up with the new proposed restricted areas is that the lady from Audubon, who's been the chief proponent, and the photographers are killing the birds, and she's gone on record and published in a big article in Audubon, just trashing nature photographers, yada, yada, yada. But her story has been there's catastrophic declines in wading bird populations at Alafia Banks, 100% because of photographers. Only when you look at the data, white ibis populations have more than doubled. Most of the rest is stable, and there's nothing declining. Catastrophic declines in her mind. Anyway, these guys nest at Alafia, and from last year to this year, they doubled their breeding population. And they're one of the most susceptible to disturbances by photographers or boaters because they nest on the outsides of the mangroves, whereas the white ibis and the spoonbills are buried. If you get a peek at a chick in 3 hours, that's a great day. I got turned on to Lake Hodges this year in San Diego, recuperating from my surgery, and found out about the dancing grebes. Whew. Talk about action. Talk about action. California gulls out of colony on Great Salt Lake. A bird on the nest, same species, California gull. Young blue-footed boobies in the Galapagos on a little island called Isla La Lobos. We're the only trip that goes there. They don't have them every year, but if Juan knows, we change the schedule if he knows they're not there. California gull yawning, brown pelicans.
Flash at all?
So far in 2 programs, I showed 1 flash picture. I used to use flash a lot, then I discovered Nik Color Effects Pro. So I use a recipe of 50%. Do I know you? Next guy. Oh, you look like a guy that traveled with me a bit. Howdy. Yeah, I use a recipe of either 50 or 25% of Nik tonal contrast and Nik detail extractor. And it's like having flash. I mean, flash, I've always had a love-hate relationship with flash, mostly hate. You got to bring all the cords, you got to bring the flash bracket and the thin and the batteries and the better beamer, and you forget one thing and you're out of business. But then sometimes I'll use flash and go, wow, that looks great, and get on a flash kick for like 2 weeks. Take flash with every picture. The Jetty at Barnegat, and then again messing around with a plug-in. The old one, Fractalius, pretty much obsolete now.
Wow, that's great.
Sometimes I like to take an intermediate lens and just take a walk. So this day at the Soda, I said, I'm just taking my 300, and I went for a walk, and this guy caught a big old, I don't know if it was, not sure of the fish. I used to know the two names, and now I can't remember either of them.
That's a fish.
Say it again?
Oh, that's a eel.
It's not an eel. No, Jesus, what's wrong with me?
Fish.
It's a fish. So is an eel, but that's begging the question. It's not a gar. Oh, I think this one is a needlefish.
Oh, yes.
I think it's a needlefish, but the two you could confuse. It's amazing how the brain works. 1 minute ago, I could not think of either name. It's either a needlefish or a ballyhoo. Ballyhoo, however you say it. And yeah, I'd like a better head angle, but I got a good fish angle. Great egret with a little bait fish. Someone besides Peter Post, what bird is it? Come on, it's a big white bird. What is it? Great egret. What is it, Peter? It's a great white heron. It's the white morph of blue heron. Great egrets have a black bill. This one's got the blue lores and the big stout bill. And Peter will tell you that it has huge, thick, stick like yellow grayish legs. This was a bird that stayed at Blind Pass for many years. Then he finally bought the bucket. Atlantic puffin in the foreign islands. We'll be going there next June. 3 people signed up. Where is it, Peter?
What?
Where is it?
Where's that?
Think, you'll get it. There's only one possible place.
Great Gull.
Great Gull Island, yeah. Common terns feeding young on rocks. You have to be on Great Gull Island. It's in the Long Island Sound. You can't get there. It's a research colony with the Museum of Natural History. Helen Hayes has been out there since 1967. This little badger of a woman, she's bent over like this because I think I did a calculation that since 1967, she's bent over the nests something like 8.9 million times to weigh, band, put the tongue depressors in. Anyway, quick story, my daughter met her husband out there when she was volunteering. So I am a Great Gull Island grandpa. There was a young brown pelican. The key word being was, and he was on the railings at Anhinga Trail. And every day he was getting weaker. And one day I took a few of my people and we went down to the little slough and we came back and everybody was running with their lenses. What happened? the gator, pelican fell in the water and the gator grabbed it. So the gator was swimming away. I got one lousy picture of the gator swimming away. And then it's getting near sunset, and then it's sunset. And then, I swear, you could feel it. It was like the music from Jaws playing. Everybody's got their lenses. Because people that know gators going, it's going to surface, it's going to surface. And like da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. So I have the 100 to 400, the old one in my hand. And somebody goes, there it is. And there's like 500 photographers squeeze in. And it's already dark. So I put my camera in TV mode at 1/500th of a second because I knew I needed a 500th. The thing is eating something. And damn the ISO. I was testing the 1D Mark III. So I had it, I use ISO safety shift, and I put in -1/3 stop because even though it was soft light, I knew there would be white inside the gator's mouth. And then I just fired away at ISO 6400. And it's made the final round of judging at BBC like 4 times, but I've given up. Similar shot.
We need something like this.
The interaction. Yeah, that's quite a transition. Now this one, you have to look at it for a while until you see what?
The baby.
There-
A little fuzzy corner.
There's the baby razorbill under Mama's wing. And this was on the UK Puffins trip. A lot of times people come on an IPT, an instructional photo tour, and they say, I want to know the one big secret of nature photography, of bird photography, that'll help me be a better photographer. And I say, great question, because there is one huge secret. It's a really big secret. Attention to small details. So here, I've just framed to get the primary tips in, rather than clipping it. So, you know, a half a stop in exposure, move a foot to the right, get it 6 inches lower. There's no great thing, it's just attention to the detail. Check the frame edges, check the background, learn to see the good situations, and your work will get better slowly. Pleasing blurs. Nickerson Beach, the standard blur speed is a 15th of a second. And that's the thing I love most about digital, is that you can play with the slow shutter speeds and have tons of fun. Jiggling the camera, Kuchenhof in the gardens. One of my favorite ever pictures, we were doing the Dahlia farm, and every day we were blessed with beautiful clear skies and still no wind, and high overcast and no wind. And we got there one day and it was drizzling and raining and wind was blowing like crazy, and everybody, oh, we can't make any good pictures, it's terrible. So I went up on the porch, just elevated about 3 feet to see the flowers better. And I did the 200 to 400 lens, I think with no teleconverter. And the exposure is 18 seconds.
18 seconds.
So it was how dark and rainy it was. And the flowers just painted themselves across.
What ISO?
50. That's the main ISO for blurs. You want to go to a low ISO so you don't get a small aperture and show every dust spot. So to that end, I use my Stingray ND filters. 77 millimeter 3-stop, 77 5-stop, and I even have a 5-stop drop-in ND for this thing here. We're going to do a blog post on the people who don't clean these in a couple of days. And the nice part is you put the 5-stop ND in there, and now you can do video at wide apertures on a sunny day. You don't want to be doing video on a sunny day at a 60th of a second at f/28. It's gonna way too much depth of field. This is the Cosmo field with a little vertical pan blur. And just some fall woods, vertical pan blur. Niagara Falls at 1/6 of a second with the 500 lens.
Oh,
The zoom blur. Duck blur, 1/8 of a second. 1/15 of a second at the Albuquerque Zoo at about 4:45. They bring buckets of food and they just dump it. So since we know when we go, we say, hey, get your intermediate telephoto, go to a 1/15 of a second minus 1/3 ISO 50, see what you get. 1/60 of a second will give you a beautiful blur on a close bird and get a chance for a sharp eye. Incorporating curves, lines, diagonal shapes, and symmetry. There's some curves, pretty sexy. There's some sexy curves. Baby corn snake. Nice S curve of this pride of lions coming down the road. Focusing on the front lion, of course. Oh, there's a creek in Yellowstone that gets fall color. There's some birds there. I forget the name of it. Beautiful pattern. This is using the breathing technique with 100 macro. The focus motion. I'll pick a sensor here, an AF sensor, and I'll half press the shutter button, and I can't stand still enough to make them sharp. And as I'm breathing, I'm half pressing the shutter button, and I keep the beep on. So when I hear the beep, I push the shutter button. Beep, beep, and then you take 20 and you get one really sharp one, sharp where you want it. George Lepp was the first one to talk about the technique 132 years ago. More dahlias, 70 to 200, 2.8. And then amazingly, the next filter is right in Photoshop. Nobody knows it. Liquify. Want curves? Make curves. Back of the bird's head often have some beautiful shapes and curves and colors. What is it, Peter?
Eider.
Common eider. Brown pelican. Diagonals. Pied little blue heron. Young bird. Beautiful diagonals. Gray-headed albatross in South Georgia. Diving blue-footed booby. Herring gull. And everybody thinks it's flying. It was this super windy day at Shinnecock Inlet, and he was on a berm. And it was so windy that he was just leaning forward into the wind, and the seaweed stuff was blowing past his head. But again, the diagonals make the picture stronger. Kelp and macaroni penguins, big on the diagonals. More diagonals. Diagonals can be very strong. That's Kenya. And this one I love. It's blackbirds and gray-tailed grackles in New Mexico. And the cool part is, and you have to train yourself to do this, when you're doing these blurs, maybe a 1/15 of a second or even a 30th, and the flocks intersect, you generally think, oh, I should stop shooting. But here, the whole thing is that the birds were going in different directions. So you're panning with one group of birds that's flying from right to left. They're relatively sharp, whereas the birds that are flying from left to right, the blur is increased because they're flying against your pan. I just love that one. Sweet little curves. Great Salt Lake. Dunes in Namibia, beautiful shapes, triangles, curves, cones. And my favorite helicopter shot, Queen Nefertiti. And symmetry, rare to get almost perfect symmetry on a bear shot. A young coastal brown bear clamming. That is the top of the bill of the pelican in Namibia, which I think is great white pelican. A little bit of symmetry there, gannet. Getting ready for fish. Textures and patterns. The pelicans, the base of the bill, amazing. That's the Namibia guy. And the dunes, oh my God. It looks like some kind of pudding. The chupaderas at Bosque. The light dusting of snow. And I'm going back to South Georgia again. And in my lifetime, I've taken about 25,000 abstract king penguin neck shots. And I'm probably going to take another couple of thousand on this trip. It's addictive. They're quite stunning.
Never have too many king penguin shots. You can never have too many king penguin shots.
I keep telling that to my mother. Salisbury Plain. And the trick here is, the trick at Salisbury Plain is to climb to the top of the hill. The one time that I did it, it was very physically demanding. And now it's 5, 6 years later. So all I do is we get in there and I just try to get up on a knoll maybe 15, 20 feet. And even that's difficult because that tussock grass is hell with the mud. But even just here we were just up maybe 20 feet up and it let us see down into the patterns. In the Galapagos, dried mud with the 100 to 400 on a tripod at f/22, focus on the leaf. Spiderweb pattern. So here's my typical, we're in Chile, and I'm dying to get tight swats of Chilean swallows. So I got this 8 to 600 with the 2X, it's drizzling, and I get the shot. And then I back up and I go, well, you know what? That looks like a pretty cool shot too. And everybody loves that way more than that, including me. Light and dark geese at Klamath Refuge. The white ones are snows and Rosses, and the dark ones are white-fronted. And I put this picture on the blog and I said, keep or delete? And half of the people said delete. But I already knew that it was honored in the BBC contest. And make a good crossword, a good jigsaw puzzle too. I'm not much into black and white. I never did black and white in the old days of real photography. But when I saw that guy in my house, at my house in the canal, I knew black and white would be a great treatment. The amazing Canon 11 to 24. If you like landscapes, what a friggin' lens. That thing is so sharp, so wide, incredible. Barnegat Jetty on a stormy day, black and white, and again, shooting into the blasting highlights. What do you do in a super bright sun? Screw around. Expose for the black and let everything go to high key. Keep a little bit of color. And this one I put in the blog. Everyone hated it. I like it. It's just a defocused blur. Just another way to try to do something when the sun is blinding. Infrared in the Palouse with the 11 to 24. That's why the trees are tilted in. 24 to 105 infrared cactus in the Galapagos. And everybody told me you can't use infrared for birds, so I said, okay. And I tried it. So, fisheye, herring gull and rainbow. Side light, not a bad location. Molting king penguins and the hillside, a filigree. That's thanks to the 100 to 400 and the close focus. 100 to 400 alone, standing 3 feet from the bird. I'm using left zone AF. Just trying to focus on this eye, and took about 300 pictures, and this was the winner clearly. Just the look, the stare. And when I posted it, someone said, "You cut off the top of the head." I said, "Thank you." A young frigate bird on the Galapagos, early morning light, subject in shade, background in sun. The background. Red-billed tropic bird in Galapagos. And the whimsical flight pose. This is in the finals of Nature's Best right now. Good luck. This was honored in Nature's Best. This is a 30th of a second, 800 1.4 on a tripod, letting the wave break over the crab, getting the crab sharp. Another early juxtaposition shot. I call this one cave painting. Oyster catcher care. When it's bad, just put your thinking cap on. We had a Nickerson workshop. I was out there. The fog was so thick you couldn't see 1 foot. Everybody said, "We can't do anything." I noticed the osprey nesting on this crane. Went back 70 to 200. Waited for the bird to land. Made this one. Went to black and white and painted back in the color of the sign. This was a case this bird kept landing. It's at the Rookery in Brandon, Florida, behind, what's the Harley Davidson place. So I just focused on the bird on the right, and then when the male returned, I just would go bam, 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 bam. And then I got a couple with him completely in the frame and on the same plane as the female. F-22 with the sun right in the crook of the neck. And these next two pictures could fit in and the eyes have it. Just this coy little look. It's Gatorland. Oh, sorry, I had one in between. This one I like so much, it's in tile behind my kitchen sink. And this one I have hopes for the BBC for next year. There was a pelican in the rain with his crest raised, which I'd never even seen before. Thank you.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.